If you're in the hall, please come in. I'm David Krantz. It's my honor and pleasure to moderate this morning's panel. Our first speaker is Kamal Kadar, who studies Bible in Lebanon at the University of Balamand. And he'll speak to us for about a half hour, and then we'll have our second speaker. We'll take questions at the end of each speaker. So thank you.
Good morning. I'm very glad to be with you in this conference today in Crete. It's first time to visit this island. I'm coming from the east, from Lebanon. I was born in Syria and living in Lebanon now and studying. I want to present a saint from my country. He is one of the greatest Eastern Church fathers. Ecological theology in the teaching of St. John of Damascus, determining the view of the Church and environmental issues has begun to emerge with the increased risks of the environmental crisis we are experiencing today. The Church sees nature as the dwelling place of man, which God has given him. Man lives in this house, the environment, but he is not the owner. This is the first theological attitude of Christianity. God is the creator and owner of nature, while man is just an inhabitant. In this sense, the Church is aware and is responsible of giving directions and launching new ideas to preserve the environmental. This goes along with the warnings issued by scientists and experts and determining the magnitude of the dangers of this crisis. Both the Church and governments are trying to find solutions for the environmental crisis in order to rebalance the ecosystem. The Church considers that the current ecological crisis is not only due to ethical reasons, but also to spiritual causes, which require protecting creation through spiritual means. The Christian world has repeatedly mentioned the views of the Holy Bible and the interpretations of the fathers in the tradition. This shows that harmony between man and his nature environment, which depends on his proper relation with God and others. This doesn't mean that the Church take an attitude against scientific development. The Church knows that the human position in the heart of creation couldn't be against progress and science. However, man tries to avoid devil temptation in using selfishly the nature and the forces of God's creation. Many of the Church fathers have dealt with the relation between God, man, and creation, which is the basis of providing a clear and comprehensive vision of how to deal with the environmental crisis. This is the focus of what we call environmental theology. St. John of Damascus is one of the fathers who contributed to this theology through his philosophical approaches to creation and its relation to God and man. The importance of St. John the Damascus comes from his wide knowledge, education, and productions in theology and biblical interpretation. He is well known for his sermons, hymns, and defense articles. A short summary of his biography is required. He was born and raised up in Syria, and he practiced his father's career in collecting taxes from the Christians of Damascus during the days of Caliph Muawiyah. When the Christians were removed from the top administrative positions in 720, the saint went to St. Saba monastery near Jerusalem, where he became a monk in the name of John. To this period of his life is due his rich intellectual output. St. John contributed to many works. One of his most famous works in the theological encyclopedia, called The Fountain of Knowledge. He wrote it at the end of his life. Christians have used this book to study theology, especially in the Christian East. St. John is also famous for his liturgical writings and hymns, and his biography tells us that he wrote stichirons and troparions of sacred Esther canon. In the writings of St. John, we can find many theological concepts which environment theology is based on. He presents some environmental issues and depends in their interpretation on philosophy on the one hand and the fathers on the other. We will try to discover the main theological concepts that are considered by the ecological theology and were tackled by St. John of Damascus in his illustration of nature and creation. This is the topic of St. John. The creation is the mirror of God's glory. God is protector of creation. God created everything in nature for man to use properly. God gave man authority and power to control all creations. God created free man and Eucharist relation. According to the fathers of the church, creation has always been book of nature revelation. And according to St. John of Damascus, the creation announces the glory of God. God has granted man the environment as a gift, not without a reason, but because of the uniqueness of his ability to take care of the environment. The creation is the mirror of God's glory. St. John says, the very creation, by its harmony and ordering, proclaims the majesty of the divine nature. St. John of Damascus explains in details the visible nature. He gives characteristics about the heaven and earth through scientific facts based in the Holy Bible and Church Fathers as well. Moreover, the saint's work is manifested by listing the visible nature as the heaven, the earth, the water, the wind, and others. He presented notions about their natures, forms, movements, and characteristics that coincide with the biblical verses. For example, in explaining the heaven, St. John gives views about its nature and illustrations and about the seven orbits, shape, its relation with Earth. However, this description wasn't only for a scientific reason, but also for paying attention to the majesty and wisdom of the Creator, which appear in his creation in all its aspects. Therefore, the aim isn't to report scientific fact about the creation or to offer a conception of the cosmos. The aim is to motivate man to glorify God by contemplating the beauty of nature, God's creation, in order to strengthen faith in God and return to Him. St. John indicates that the Holy Bible personifies the non-living things and addresses them as he addresses the living ones, as in Psalm 19, verse 1, the heavens declare the glory of God. This doesn't mean that they produce sounds heard by bodily ears or human ears. The personification points to the capability of the Creator and his ingenuity in his creation. St. John says, but that form their own greatness about heaven. They bring before our minds the power of the Creator, and when we contemplate their beauty, we praise the Maker as the master craftsman. God is protector of creation. The theology of the Orthodox Church considers three qualities for the creation of the world, existing in time, creating from nothing, and corruption. These details, qualities distinguish world from God. Consequently, the creation isn't from the divine essence. It's created by the free will of God that creates and preserves. That is why the St. John emphasizes that God, only according to his nature, has no beginning and no end, while the creation is impermanent because of its moral nature. St. John says, all things, then, which are brought into existence are subject to corruption according to the law of their nature. The saint's emphasis on the corruption of the creation is to verify the idea of creation from nothing. Hence, creation has a beginning and an end. It cannot exist by itself or be independent of its creator. So it's susceptible to change and vanish. It's not eternal. This means that the world and the creation are binary paradox. On one hand, God preserves and guards creation, and on the other hand, man acquires his existence by God's intervention. St. John says, our God himself, whom we glorify as three in one, created the heaven and the earth and all that they contain, and brought all things out of nothing into being. Some he made out of no pre-existent basis of matter. He mentioned in other place, but by the grace of God, they are maintained and preserved. God created everything in nature for man to use properly. God gave nature and all what he created in it power used for the benefit of man. Thus, St. John of Damascus explains, while describing earth and its evolution, that all of system of the creation is to serve man. That is why man was created on the sixth day. God created firstly the environment to be the home, ecos, that the man lives in and benefit from. The waters gathered into one place, and the dry land and mountains appeared. Then God decorated earth with all kinds of herbs and plants, giving them power to fruitful, to grow and multiply. Some give fruit for eating, some are sweet for smelling, some bear roses for enjoyment, and others for curing and healing. Concerning animals, all are for man's benefit, for food like deer and sheep, for work like horses and cows, for pleasure and amusement like monkeys and birds. In addition, St. John shows that all what God created was offered for man's benefit, because he knows that man will trespass his free will, and as a result he will fall into corruption. St. John says, for there isn't a single animal or plant in which the Creator hasn't implanted some form of energy capable of being used to satisfy man's needs. God gave man authority and power to control all creation. God created the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it, and asked him to be the master and dominator. St. John of Damascus illustrates that before Adam's fall, all creations were under his control, including the serpent, which was friendly with man more than others were, and used to amuse him. All the animals fed on the fruits that earth grew, although there was neither winter nor rain. St. John says, indeed, before the transgression, all things were under his power, for God set him as ruler over all things on the earth and in the waters. The biblical theology explains that authority means taking care and serving, not only controlling. For this reason, God empowered man and gave him many direct environmental responsibilities, such as plowing the land, naming animals, serving the creation. Moreover, Adam's fall and disobedience resulted in destroying his relation with God and with his surrounding plants, animals, and environment in general. Due to this transgression, St. John clarifies, according to the Holy Bible, how the environment revolted against man. From the beginning, it grew thorns and thistles, and in the sweat he would eat his bread. St. John shows that his rebellion wasn't without benefit. Each creation that exists after the fall has his role and benefit. For instance, beasts frighten man and leads him to call God, which are paired with gentle roses, remind man of his sin. God created man free. Man is free to do whatever he wants. He has the freedom to choose between either taking care of creation or sacrificing his needs. St. John of Damascus distinguishes between what is within our capacity of preserve and what is over it. Man is responsible for his deeds, and very action or behavior is personal because God created him free. Hence, man can't accuse God or others of what he has done with this complete freedom. In fact, what has happened to the environment today is not from its nature, but from man's abuse of freedom. St. John says, "For it would not be right to ascribe to God actions that are sometimes base and unjust, nor may we ascribe this to necessity, nor a fate, nor to nature, nor to chance, nor to accident. We are left then with this fact that the man who acts and makes it himself the author of his own works and is a creature endowed with free will." An Eucharist relation. The relation among God, man, and creation is an Eucharist one because man is the priest of God's creation. That is why man offers his products and fruits to thank God. Wine and bread in the divine liturgy are gifts from God and fruits of man's labor at the same time. Consequently, the Orthodox theology recognizes that in the Eucharist or liturgy, man and creation reunite and live the lost unity again. Everything is restored in the body of Christ and is offered again to thank God. This relation between God and creation, rooted in living the Eucharist, has led St. John of Damascus to announce in his apology of the icons that the incarnation of Son of God proved the salvation of the matter. And I will repeat his note. "I don't worship matter, I worship the creator of matter, who became matter for my sake, and who willed to take his abode in matter, who worked out my salvation through matter." St. John of Damascus is considered the greatest theologian of his time and one of the most famous Eastern writers. The legacy of many teaching of the great Eastern Church Fathers is attributed to him. Using his knowledge and education, he articulated the doctrines of the Christian faith in a logical and systematic manner, based on the teaching of the Holy Bible and the fatherly tradition. So many qualities and talents are combined on one person in this saint. He is the philosopher, the theologian, the monk, the saint, the prophet, the fanatical preacher, the strong defender of the Orthodox faith, the inspired poet of the church hymns, the owner of Damascus, and the glittering star of the glorious church of Antioch. To sum up, St. John of Damascus' ecological contribution to the environment is significant, as it supports the foundation of the proper relation between man and creation. This foundation forms one of the most important views of the Orthodox theology, which is the reconciliation of man with nature by restoring his relation with God. This relation will soften the cruelty of fallen nature and revive the good communication between man and creation. It can change man's behavior from enslaving creation to guarding and protecting it. Certainly, through such a relation with creation, man fulfills his royal priesthood. Thank you.
Kamal, thank you very much. I'd like to ask Elena to come up and start setting up, and we have time for questions for Kamal.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm very happy to have this focus on St. John of Damascus. If you Google St. John of Damascus and ecotheology, there is a quotation that is repeated 100 times in the internet. The whole creation is a living icon of the glory of God. However, when I went to the treaty on the holy images of St. John of Damascus, I didn't find this quotation. While it is repeated as one of the most relevant quotations from St. John of Damascus, and I was wondering whether this is a real quotation. It has we were talking about the mirror of the glory of God. But while he's talking about the holy images, the icons, and that living icon, I wonder whether this is a real quotation, because in the three presentations that we heard from Alicia, from Father Evangelos, and from you, this quotation was not mentioned. You mentioned all this reverencing the God who created matter, but not this. I don't know whether you are aware of this quotation. It is true, it's not true.
Okay. I was mentioned that all the teaching I presented today, it's not clear in his writings. St. John, in his book I presented, Fountain of Knowledge, he proclaims all creations, water and the man and the wind and animals, everything, by philosophical approach. So I tried to output these ideas of him, and these ideas rooted to other Eastern Fathers Church, and all of them agree with the same ideas about creation, and the creation a glory of God. I don't know if I answered.
Do we have other questions? Lucas.
I'd like to thank you also for your nice presentation.
Thank you.
I think we need the Orthodox young theologians who have to make bigger studies on the environmental aspects or contribution of all these saints. I just want to make a comment or
old man?
Man. Instead of human being or
Yes, man was
person or yes. I
man
know
was
that
big later.
yes. I don't know if we should continue to use this word and change it into human for the sake of our faith or our also contribution to the oikos, ecumene, like sense of collaboration, because we are too strong, too patristic, as they told to me also. So what's your point of view on that?
No, in Arabic language we use al-insan. That's mean human. But when we study about theology, we use much better man in a capital letter. I don't know if in English it's there is a difference between man and human. Okay. Okay, I will replace it.
Yeah, in Arabic, all words, if I recall correctly, all words are gendered, right?
Yes.
Right. So since all words are gendered in Arabic, every word has a gender, regardless of whether or not it actually has that gender. Right.
Yes.
So a table is either masculine or feminine.
Yes.
Right. So oftentimes when things are translated from gendered languages, they're translated over having that gender, but it doesn't mean necessarily that the subject of that word has that gender. We have time for one last question.
I would just like to forward question or to put forward another more question. Since we are in a Greek-speaking area, I would like to ask you about the definition on Chalcedonian, the Chalcedonian definition of, in terms of Catholic, not just Catholic, but the Christian notion about Christ being truly human and truly divine. So there is please excuse me for my non-correct pronunciation of the Greek terms, and it says theon aletos kai anthropon aletos. So truly God and truly human being, right? So now I would like to ask in terms of gender, what you brilliantly explained. There's actually, my thoughts are, can we ask ourselves actually if the ancient authors, when they wrote anthropos or homo, man, human being, regardless of gender, or if they were often thinking of male man, but the word anthropos as such, and this give me the explanation if I'm correct or not, refers to a human being of either gender, women or men. And throughout this Chalcedonian definition itself, all the terms used to refer to Christ's human nature are derived from anthropos, not aner or andras, the word for man. Right? Am I, please, I just, I had just one small seminar at the Faculty of Theology in Slovenia, so please do correct me if my thoughts are not in the right pattern.
Okay, I guess in Arabic we use a man in English, this word man, as a person, yani male and female, not we talk about just a man. So I use this word in my presentation, and I guess the difference I put a capital letter. It's to explain the word well.
Great. Thank you very much, Kamal. Please join me in thanking him again. You can stay. Well, our next speaker is Elena. She studies pastoral and social theology at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. Please join me in welcoming her.
Good morning. Do you hear me now? Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to clarify that when with the word man, I mean the human being, and with the word world, I mean the God creation. The Orthodox Church teaches that God created the world to surround and serve the human. And in return, the man was ordered by God to live here and protect his creation and act as guardian. We cannot speculate the existence of the world without the man or the man without the world. These two are indissolubly together, as the world plays a very important part in man's salvation, as the man himself. Only inside the world the man can reach his Creator, which is his ultimate purpose. God was motivated by this love to man, and he created and gave him the earth as a gift. And the only thing he asked from him was to love and respect it, to use it with thoughtfulness, without depleting the natural resources. According to the Fathers, the environmental problem is a spiritual problem because it's the result of human judgment. The degradation of the environment is considered sin, as it is the result of a human greed, one of the 7 deadly sins. The monasteries materialize the preaching of the Church to protect and preserve the natural environment that surrounds them and ensure the well-being of the living creatures. These are a lot of Orthodox Christian monasteries all over the world which take action to protect the environment, but I would like to concentrate to the ones located in Greece. I would like to mention 4 monasteries which, in my opinion, their work is remarkable as examples. Those 4 are the monastery of Zodochos Pigi, here in Chania, well known as Chrysopigi, the monastery of Simonos Petra in Mount Athos, the monastery of Zodochos Pigis in Thessaloniki, and finally the monastery of Prophet Iliavounio in Preveza. Since ancient time, the man used herbs and other natural ingredients, such as minerals before the invention of pesticides. Natural made concoctions used to strengthen the plants and make them grow faster. With the development of technology, more and more people turn to chemicals products for the cultivation of the plants without taking into consideration the consequences in nature. Monasteries gather all the ancient knowledge and use it to cultivate plants without the use of any chemical substance. For instance, basil, marigold, and brimstone are used as insect repellents due to their intense smell. For the fruit flies, which is a kind of insect known as dacos, they use traps specially made for dacos or specific insects which consume it. The husk of rice is used to prevent weeds from growing around the plant. They put nettle in the barrel full of water and leave it there for 15 days. The remixture resulted is a strong growth stimulator. The composting the remains of the fruit and vegetables mixed with straw or sawdust and the animal's manure, which they use it as a fertilizer. The monastery of Chrysopigi cultivates vegetarians vegetarians invades a category of a lagoon, and when it blossoms, produce organic nitrogen and enrich the soil. The monastery of Zodochou in Thessaloniki is using a similar technique. After the harvest, they spread fertilizer on the wheat, and then they let it grow. Afterwards, they cut it, then mixed it with more compost to fertilize the field. The same monastery cultivates mushrooms in special foam containers. This monastery was blessed from Patriarch Bartholomeus when it opened. The monastery usually raises domestic animals. The most common are sheep, goats, cows, and chickens. Rarely they raise donkeys and horses. Those animals are raised for their milk and eggs, which are an important component of their diet, and not for their meat. In some cases, they breed other animals and even fish. For their milk, they produce cheese, yogurt, and kefir. The animals are fed with the crops they cultivate, and their manure is used to fertilize the crops. A lot of monasteries have cats to prevent the mice infection, since they don't use chemicals. Bees are very common in monasteries, so they plant specific flowers that are beneficial for the bees. Large monasteries have forests, fields, or even lakes which host wild animals, endemic or not. In these areas, hunting is forbidden. The monastery of Prophetess Elias in Preveza includes 3 lakes, which is the habitat of 24 endangered species of birds, and over 240 different species of birds use their areas for reproduction, and a large amount of birds stay for the winter. The same monastery breeds eels, sea bream, and other fish in the lagoon. The ecosystem complements over 20 buffaloes. The monasteries from the early age were usually built in areas of extreme nature beauty and near water sources, or in the middle of the desert, so that they are self-sufficient and away from civilization. Monasteries, most of the time, were surrounded by forest. They could protect as much as possible the environment. They would not cut more trees than needed, and in occasions of abuse, they would immediately take action. For instance, there is a law that forbids the sale of timber in Mount Athos. The timber is strictly for the monks. Before cutting the trees, they consult the authorities in which one they should cut. They also inform them in case of dry or real trees, so the agronomist will be able to inspect them. In the case of a disaster, such as fire, they take immediately action to restore the forest to its previous state by planting trees or seeds. During the summer, when the temperature reaches the highest degree and there is a wind, they patrol the forest surrounding the monasteries, so they will be able to detect any fire that may occur. They remove dry branches and even dead trees, so in the case of the fire, the damage will be minimal and it will not spread. Simonos Petra Monastery in Mount Athos created a beach between the hills so that they collect water, which is used in case of a fire. In the effort to reduce a carbon footprint, many monasteries use renewable sources for the needs of the monastery, like solar panel and hydro generators. The monastery of Chrysopigi and some in Mount Athos use solar panel. Simon Petra in Athos, they use combination of solar panel, hydro generator, and petroleum generator. They use as much as possible recyclable materials, so they reduce the use of non-recyclable one. Finally, many monasteries, like the monastery of Chrysopigi, they have biological treatment of waste. Finally, the monastery of Zodochopigi in Thessaloniki use effective microorganism known as M in the cultivation. The effective organism is a mix of beneficial and naturally occurring organisms that can apply to the soil and improve its quality. It consists mainly from the photosynthesizing bacteria, lactic acid bacteria, yeast, actinomycetes, and fermenting fungi. Naturally compatible with one another, and they can coexist in liquid state. The effective microorganisms protect the plants from diseases caused by pathogenic microorganisms by balancing the link between pathogenic and beneficial microorganisms. The pathogenic microorganisms are not destroyed and the plants are not cured. But with the use of EM, the symptoms are minimized and the plant is able to fructify. The monastery gets the supplies of EM from Japan, and the process EM and produce byproducts. They dilute the byproducts and use it in the crops as a fertilizer or mixed it in water for the animals. In other occasions, they mix the byproduct with natural ingredients like hot pepper, garlic, and they create antifungal spray. Finally, they use for the faster processing of manure. Thank you very much. I forgot to use the PowerPoint.
So thank you very much, Elena. We have time for questions. Is that a question?
Not a question as such, but a commentary. I think this presentation helped us very much to understand and deepen what we saw yesterday when we visited the monastery. This dimension of protection of the environment, but also education with the people. I think this is a very good complement and reflection on what we experienced together yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I forgot the PowerPoint.
I would like also to thank you so much for your presentation, and I really appreciate and I'm very happy to see young students to deal with such an important and spiritual studies. Yes. When I was at your age and I couldn't make such a presentation, so I would encourage you to continue your studies and try to make contact with seniors here, and maybe put some pictures, some photos.
Oh, I did a presentation, but I forgot to.
Yes.
Sorry.
That would be nice to help
Yes.
your.
To be honest, I did it.
Okay, you had
They,
photos?
yes.
You didn't saw it.
Most of them. I forgot it.
Okay, so you can have a look on it. We still have
Sorry.
photos you're doing. So
You can scroll through.
continue with the photos and you can comment if you
Okay.
want. We have enough time.
Those mushrooms are cultivated in the monastery of Zodochopigi in Thessaloniki. They used containers for their cultivation.
This is why we found cats at the monastery.
Yes.
They were hungry, so they were
This is from yesterday, from the monastery of Ecothee. Thank you.
Great. Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
Thank you. That was very nice. Did you visit any of these monasteries
Yes.
before you did your paper, or purposely for the paper?
To be honest, I visited the monastery of Ecothee for icon painting. They have a great program there. And I knew about their cultivation, so when I had the subject, I revisited them to find out more.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
And of course, I visited Meteora, and with the university, we visited a lot of churches and monasteries around Greece. So I knew a little bit.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think, Elena, this was such an important topic that you wrote about and presented, because in the West, particularly in Canada and the United States, we don't have monasteries, really. I did my master's in a monastery in San Francisco over the summers. I did that. But they keep on trying to set up these monastic programs or these monastic monasteries throughout Canada and the United States, and it's almost impossible because people are not interested. So this is a very important spiritual heritage. The fact that we come to Crete and Greece, it's really one of the gifts of your country. So it's good that you shared it. And keep studying and share it. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Well, please join me in thanking Elena once again. That concludes our session. There is a coffee break now, and we resume at 11:30. Thank you all very much.